everybody. Today I wanted to talk about some complex prints and some print problems that just aren't your standard issue. So today I've been trying to get some pieces printed for this Genji helmet from Overwatch. It's a really large helmet, and in fact I have some samples here. So I believe this is the chin part, and as you can tell, this one actually turned out like butter. Now, this was printed on my Soval SV01, which it has a bed size of about 280 by 240 by 300. So you can tell I did have to slice it here just to be able to fit on the bed. It's really large. But this was using that JMO technology filament that is just really completely great, made in the United States, and it just turned out super good. Here's a piece. Here's another piece, completely different. Lots of complex curves and inlays and everything. Again, turned out really well. But then we get to this piece. And here is a good, bad example. So this one here, just, same filament, same settings in Cura and everything, just literally fell apart on the bed. There's problems with this overhang here, the sort of like long pointy ear part. And there's these problems down here underneath, just couldn't get cooled properly, didn't really adhere to each other, all those kind of things. And you might look at a print like that and say, wow, you need to level the bed better. You need to, check the nozzle, all those kind of things. Might be clogs. This was not that problem. And, this right here is a good example of what to check for before you actually say go to the printer with it. This you can fix inside of Cura, and I'm going to show you how, because you can actually see where some of these problems are. I'm going to show you how to detect it and how to fix it. So here we are inside of Cura, and you can see this print right here. And in the version that I showed you, it was torn apart sort of right here. And there were some other problems back here. I had a lot of supports, and you can see why. That would never bridge. So we had a lot of supports underneath this holding it up. Now you can tell why I laid it down on this face here. It's super flat because that's the one that I cut it with inside of Meshmixer. Here is that very same part right here. You can see it. You can see that sort of like pointed ear thing. You can see the part itself right here. And here is the chin piece that I showed you before, this guy here. So you can see how that fits in on the helmet. So this particular piece here is the one that's causing us trouble. So let's go ahead. We'll fly back into Cura here and take a look why. So this, you might also ask, why not? There's a couple of other flat pieces here. Why not stand it up differently? So let's take a look at that. So of course we can go kind of zoom in here a little bit. We can select our piece, go to rotate, and say, you know what, I want to pick a face to stand it up on, and I'm going to try this one first. And let's zoom out a little bit and take a look. Well, so for sure, you could definitely slice this guy, and we might let it go here real quick. But you're going to see a lot of issues with how this guy slices in particular. So let's go ahead and preview. And so let's take a look. What we have here is a whole lot of stuff. Okay, that's not so bad, right? Of course, we know we need to support this. And well, this may or may not attach well. I just don't like these kind of supports hanging out here, attaching to the body itself very well, so much. So we also have these guys here that we have to worry about, these holes, because you can tell part is kind of leaning in that direction, and it does need some help. So the problem really comes into view when we start taking a look at how this guy will actually print. So let's go from the ground up. And what we see here is as we go up, not so bad, not so bad. So far, so good. And then we start seeing, well, it's going to try to print some support on the actual face of the body, the outside wall. Yeah, I don't like it, but probably wouldn't completely fail. All right, let's keep going. All right, so so far so good. I mean, there are some parts that I don't like that are attaching to the actual wall itself. Not a really big fan of that for separation reasons later. You can see over here again, some more interesting stuff. Now let's take a look at what's going on right here. Okay, so we have this actual part of the real body. This is the shell, and then we can see the support piece here. Let's see how that's going to generate. Well, it probably would work. It is on top of one of the support pieces. Okay, so far so good. Now it's starting to get a little bridgy here. Okay, why not? But when those support pieces start to grow up into that ear piece, we're just never going to be able to get that out. Okay, so we have some pieces here that are kind of scary, support pieces going up onto the body itself. It may not actually adhere because there's an air gap here. You can see it's trying to do it. So we have these guys trying to go up into the upper body. And here we go. Let's keep going. And what we have actually into that ear is a whole lot of support that we'll just never really be able to get out. So not really a fan of this angle either. And also with all that support out here, boy, it's real iffy if this material here can be supported just by that. So okay, let's try the other angle. So we have another one that we can choose. We can try this face over here. You can see it is actually flat. Doesn't look at it because of the weird angles. So let's try rotating and selecting that face. Okay, so first off, really tall piece, and you can tell that to get this roof, we're going to have all sorts of support material in here, and this would have to be supported. Let's go ahead and let it slice, and then let's see what we've got. So not bad, 5 hours, 53 minutes. Oh boy. So I'm guessing there's a whole lot of support material. Like we're almost doing all support here. So if we hover over this eye, we can come over here to support and see, yeah, we're an hour and 10 minutes. 20% of our print is just doing support. And boy, would that be fun to get off, right? So let's take a look and see what it looks like as we slice. So let's start at the ground again, work our way up. Again, we have some support material going on to the base. Not a real big fan of that. And let's keep going. All right, yeah, there's some kind of complicated things going on here. You can see two things. More support onto the body. And let's zoom in here. This skinny support structure is going to have to hold a whole lot of our actual outside walls. So yeah, I'm not really thinking that this would finish very well either. I mean, that little printed triangle has to fit on there just right. Chances of that working well are, in our favor, not very good. So let's keep taking a look here, seeing what else happens as we go up though. So here we are into that sort of ear area here. Again, all of this being supported not by the actual build plate, but the actual outside wall itself. And we're starting to do some really complicated things here, trying to build on top of that, and so on. So again, a lot of complicated, very long, could be big issues here. So again, we have more outside face stuff, and I just don't have a whole lot of faith that this will really work in our favor again. So if we go ahead and go back to where we were, so we can see this is the original layout we had. And if we go ahead and slice this, I will show you why mine failed. So I'll go ahead and slice. Okay, preview. And let's take a look here. So this part over here, it probably could be broken apart, but I'm telling you, it's going to take some doing. It's really in there well, no matter the separation layers that I gave it. Also inside, so all of this junk here, it actually goes up into this canal over here. So if we take a look, So we're building up, we're going vertically. Now we've just bridged over into this long ear part, and it's the same support material. You'll never get that apart. Now also, you can remember that in this complex curve here, so over here, we barely printed this well, and you can see there's a lot of action going on here. It's because basically this stuff was damming up our air. So what would happen is all of this stuff was blocking air from going underneath this well, and you can actually see back in here, you can see all this stuff did not melt, did not go together very well, and it just caused a big fat mess. And it was because the fan wasn't able to cool the things right. It wasn't really able to come together well. So again, that plus this big structure over here, plus this mess over here, just not a great thing to do. So what do we do about fixing this? I say if it was just a little more simple, meaning that we didn't have this big area over here and this over here, we could probably, if this was separate, we could probably stand this up and print it just fine. And then we could worry about what to do properly about this area here. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's go back into Meshmixer. I'm going to just view this part here. So that's the left ear. I'm going to turn off almost everything else, right? So we can just kind of focus on what we want to do here. All right. So all these guys go away. There we are. There's our familiar piece. Now, this is pretty easy inside of Meshmixer. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a pretty good angle on what I want to cut. I want to do another plane cut just somewhere in the middle of this guy here. All right. So to do that, I'm going to get a good angle. So I'm going to go in here, and what I'm going to do is select this stuff over here. And I am going to actually go into select. And I don't want to use this brush to select faces. What I actually want to do is use the lasso, right? So I'm going to bring that into an area here. And what I want to do is intentionally with this lasso, start selecting on an area that's the background, not on the geometry. So I can draw a line kind of like this. And what it'll do is turn all that stuff orange. Now, whatever is orange will be cut by the plane that I want to use. Now, what I don't want to do is have all this back-facing stuff back here potentially cut. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So what I want to do is I actually want to make my brush size a little smaller here, maybe something like that. And I want to hold down Control. And yeah, I want to just, Control will allow me to erase some of this stuff. I want to erase all the orange nonsense over here so it doesn't get cut by our plane. All right, so we don't want to slice that part off at all. So let's just go ahead and drag around out here. All right, and get rid of all that orange. We also have to change the other side. We have to double check over here. Whoa. All right, we have to take all this stuff, still holding down Control to make sure we're erasing all this stuff. And we're going to get rid of all these orange triangles over here. All right. In other words, what we're left with is just that section that we do want to cut. All right. So right click, and let's kind of get back over to there. Oops. Zoom out. There we go. So what I want to do is cut this basically in half. Okay. So now I'm going to go up to edit, and I'm just going to do a simple plane cut like this. And I'm going to use the up arrow, and you're going to see exactly where it is, right? So as I up arrow this, you can tell that what's going on is it's not cutting anything over here. It's only cutting this stuff. So as we take a look around, you can see what's being cut. All right. So now we have some options on how to get this cut done right. You can see it's at a weird angle here and a tall angle there. Yeah, it probably would be fine on the bed, but I would like to sort of get that angle better so it's more flat this way. It'll probably print a little bit better. So I'm just going to use this, And that looks pretty close to me. It doesn't have to be perfect in this case. I want a little bit more, markers here so I can go up a little more fine tuned. So I'm going to hit the up arrow a couple times. All right, there we go. Now I can bring this up. I want to make sure it's probably about half. Let's just say that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to take another look around and you can see exactly where our cut is, and that looks good to me. So a couple of options. Cut type, we want to make sure that we keep both. And remesh fill is fine. In this case, it's hollow anyway, so it's not really going to remesh except for the edges. So let's go ahead and hit accept. We don't see it as two different pieces, and I wonder why. So what we have to do is we have to go into edit, and then we have to say separate shells. And separate shells will do that, just that. It'll take that and break it into two pieces. And you can see the one here. So it's called this one shell 2, and I'm going to rename that to say, I'm going to take this away, and I'm going to call it ear point. So it's Genji left ear point STL, right? And you can see what happens if we turn that off. All right, it's that piece. And then we have Genji left ear this piece. So if we turn that off again, we can see exactly how it has cut those two pieces. All right, no problem. So what we do is we want to take, we should rename this guy too while we're here. And we can just have him be the same name, left ear. Okay, so now that we have the left ear selected, I'm going to go ahead and export that. So I'm going to go over to the side here and hit the export button. And we're going to call it left ear part. We're just going to write over that. And I'm going to hit save. Yes, I want to replace it. Trust me. Okay, and then what I want to do is go down to that second part. We called it Genji left ear point. And just for the sake of just seeing the right thing, I'm going to turn that on, and here's our part. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this guy selected. I'm going to go hit export, and we're going to call it the point part. So left ear point. Hit save, and yes, I do want to overwrite. All right, so let's go bring that back in. All right, now one thing I would say is let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so you can see this piece here, all this red sits flat, but you know what? This other piece needs to be supported here and doesn't quite sit flat because of this angle. So you know what, that's okay. That's fine. But what we're gonna find out here is that we're gonna have this piece that now that it's cut isn't with that big overhang. It'll print a lot nicer. But you know what? We're still gonna have a whole lot of problem under with all those supports. So you know what? I think it's going to be a little less risky if we do go ahead and take that angle that we were playing with here. So even though we've solved this problem, in other words, we still have so much going on under the hood in here, probably not worth leaving. So let's go ahead and take a less risky option in this case and rotate, select face, and this one. Yeah, I'm kind of liking this because now without that sort of big long point over here sticking out, we can support things a lot better and get onto it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and sort of rotate this guy so he's just a little more flat this way. Okay, let's take a look at him this way. Yep, so we want to do the same thing. We want him to sit on that. All right, so let's get to the business of getting this thing all supported. Now that we have this positioned better, we'll go ahead and give it a quick slice and see where we're at. So let's come over here and hit slice and see what it comes up with. All right, let's hit preview. Oh, 7 hours and 5 minutes. Let's take a look. Okay, yeah, so here's what I'm seeing so far. Again, like you could probably sometimes maybe get away with some of these support structures that go onto the actual main body and still have an air gap like that. But you know what? we're all about not taking risks on this one because it was a problem and it broke apart before. So I really don't like that. I don't think it'll print very well. Let's take a look at the back side. And yeah, we have these kind of weird, awkward guys here that probably won't really print. But worse than that, what's supporting this whole top structure here is this kind of curvy, weird piece that also is attached to the outside wall. So yeah, the chances of this working well are pretty slim. So I'm not really liking that. So what we really need to think of is a better way to slice this that's less risky. So what I would recommend at this point, since we have this sort of overhang that's reaching and this part here that definitely needs supported, because we definitely need this to be nice and square and work well, because that's going to connect to this piece down here. We're going to want to sand and glue that. So let's think about going into experimental, and I would want to turn on tree support. So tree support will go ahead and it'll put a piece down here, like where the raft area is, and grow up a branch, and it'll overhang, and then it'll support this and that together. Now, whenever I do use tree support, I like to throw a couple of custom options on. So I'm going to go over here to the cog over in the experimental section, and there are two options that I like to turn on for tree support. And the reason I do that is, well, let me show you the options first. It's this angle one here and resolution. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn them on, and then I'll explain why. So what I'm after here is a little bit more of a vertical branch instead of, like, let's say going halfway and attaching to the side here and then splitting one branch up here and then another branch there. I don't want that because it's a little messy on my actual outside wall, and it could put a riskier branch out there that, it might not do what we want. So I believe the defaults here are 30 and 0.3, but I changed that to 50 and 0.2. Now I'm going to hover over this, and it says the angle of the branches, use a lower angle to make them more vertical and more stable, use a higher angle to have more reach. So in this case, we do want it to be sort of vertical, but we do want it to reach over instead of attaching, okay? And on this one, the collision resolution, so setting this lower will produce more accurate trees that fail less often. That sounds like what we want. So I changed it from a 0.3 to this 0.2. So that's great. I'm going to leave it there. Now, what I will tell you is I'm going to go ahead and do one more change here, because here's what I want. With my tree supports, when they attach, I want to have them support well, but be able to detach pretty easily too. So I know they have the air gap, but what we want to do is, now we are printing a 0.6 millimeter nozzle, okay, just so that we have less layers and thicker pieces and print faster. Really, that's the whole goal of a bigger nozzle, is to print faster. So now, instead of at a 0.3 where I would normally print things like you've seen on the other pieces, I'm going to go all the way down to 0.2 on a 0.6 nozzle. And I'm just telling you, that's probably, if you do the calculations, it's probably as low of a layer height as you ever want with a 0.6 nozzle. So since we're at 0.2 layer heights, what I want to do is I want to change my support, the support Z distance. 0.2 is probably just a little small for that nice clean snap. I don't want to have to work too hard at it. So I'm going to go ahead and change it from a 0.2 to a 0.28. I think a 0.3 would just be a little much for still keeping the infill at a 0.2 layer height. So let's try that. And then one thing I'll tell you, let's hit slice. And it is going to take a little longer, because when you modify these tree supports, tree supports do take a little longer in the first place, but when you tend to modify these calculations from the out of the box settings, it will take a little bit longer than normal to slice. So let's go ahead and let that do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to kind of rotate over here and tell you what's going to happen. So this guy who's nice and flat here, if you look, has a lot of red around this big overhang, and that's because it's much different size than this. So it does need to be supported, and so does this indent piece. So when we hit preview here now, you're going to see the tree support structure come up here and support this little inlay, and everything else around it, yep, looks pretty nice and supported. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tree support structure that we've gotten here. And yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. So you'll notice that this tree support structure doesn't touch the body. It's nice and anchored down here into our raft, and it's reaching just perfectly. So what's happened here is the big branch comes up here and then it shoots off and supports this overhang just right. And it also supports this inlay here, and barely with our air gap touches the print. So it's going to be nice and supported and break away just fine with not a big mess. So let's check the backside too. So let's go over here, and yeah, we still have these guys here, and you know what? They're not going to harm anything, so I'm not going to bother with a support block on them. But more importantly, what's happened here is this base, it grew the raft to be able to support this big tree trunk here. And you'll see that that trunk goes all the way up here and starts to support this curve here, this overhang, and same structure inside here to support this stuff at the top and even in this little window here, right? So great, it looks wonderful. You can see the air gap here. I think we'll have a really good print back here. You'll probably be able to grab this either with your hand if you're lucky, or maybe a pair of pliers. Grab that whole structure and pop, it'll come right off nice and clean. So overall, I'm super happy with this. I'm confident here that this is going to be a good print, especially compared to the failure we had before with it laying the other way. So this looks great to me, by the way. So both pieces look really good. Now, in reality, what I would probably do, because this is an 8-hour and 48-minute print. So yeah, I mean, that's not terribly long in the grand scheme of things. But what I see here is that it's probably less risky overall. And you know, our goal here is to be less risky and more confident. I would probably go ahead and save this. And I would just print this piece by itself, deleting this one, and then do the opposite. I would delete this one and print that one separately. You know, just sometimes it's much easier to print them 2 times, you know, this one and that one separately instead of, yeah, we can technically fill the bed. But I would rather have this one print really well. And hey, if anything happened along the way, I don't know, maybe I bumped the printer or something. We're not going to waste all the plastic that we had on this one. So let's go ahead and we'll actually remove this one, print this, remove this, print that, and then we'll get back and show you the actual results. Okay, so here are our finished prints. Now, I've actually gone ahead and taken the support material off, but as you can see, it came out exactly as we thought. So it's a very good finish. You can see that both pieces printed in this exact orientation, just like we had it in Cura. That's nice and clean. This is nice and clean. That came out nice and flat and straight, supported well. No problems, obviously, with this tearing apart like before. And this other piece here came out just as fine as well. So we can see that the angles are all great. The bottom is just as we expected. Probably some sanding we need to do to clean some of that up, but no problem. Very easy to take care of that. And the surface is really great. So printed just at the angle that we expected, and everything seems to be running just fine here. So it's a much better way than when we tried to print it this way and it all fell apart. So just by means of comparison, here's the bad piece that fell apart again versus this guy here. So you can kind of see that's the same piece, right? But much better result with this than we did before with it falling apart. So just by being able to make a slice here and break these two off, we were able to really play with the angles better inside of Cura to be able to do what it was that we needed to do. Have a reliable print, be able to change the angle to do it just right. And I couldn't be more happy with the final results. Hey there. So let's just kind of review what we went through today. So we started off with wanting to take something complex like a larger helmet that would fit our bed. So we knew we had to slice it down in the first place. So we went in the Meshmixer, cut it up so that it would fit our bed well. And then we had some problems printing. So we had some pieces that printed really great. So like this guy here, awesome. Some of these other parts, completely great, no problems. And then we ran into some complex stuff with curves all over the place, weird angles and everything, like this guy here. And you can tell it was awful, right? It just did not print, it failed. But in this case, it wasn't a problem with the printer. It wasn't needing to level the bed. It wasn't a clog or anything weird like that. It's just that we tried to give the printer something that it couldn't do, and it had especially to do with complex angles fighting against each other, where maybe some of our support was damming up the air that's supposed to get in there, cool things, and all sorts of stuff like that. So we learned that by checking it out first in Cura, we can determine that that kind of stuff could happen. We can look at it and kind of learn, boy, that's something that probably is a little too much in one piece. So then once we determined that, we found out how to fix it. And the way that we were able to fix it was to go back in and cut a piece off. So where this one had this large overhang, this long part of the ear, and then it had some things over here that were causing the air not to get through. What we did is we took those two pieces, and you can see like it was normally like this. And what we did is we cut them in Meshmixer, so they're two different pieces. And then it printed just fine. So instead of having to print it laying down like this, we're able to raise it up at the right angle, not having to worry about the piece that was out there before. So now printing it like this, we added some custom options to make sure our tree support was just right, and it printed fine. In fact, both pieces. We also thought about, since this failed before, maybe it's less risky to be able to print them independently. So not only did we slice them, we cut them separately. In Meshmixer, we just felt that it would be better to print them separately too. So first the one piece and then the second piece printed. So much easier, much better way to go, just to do it and keep it simple. So we learned all sorts of things about detecting and fixing problems. So I hope that you find this to be useful. And if it is, go ahead and write some more emails to us and hit us up on Facebook and Instagram. Let us know what you'd like to see next, because our whole aim here is to be able to solve problems that you tell us about so that you have the ability to print more confidently. So we're all about trying to learn and then teach you guys what's the best way to go, so that you have the ability to get the things done that you want, so you can do your production pieces, you can get the fun things out of your printer that you got it for in the first place, and that you love it again. So thank you for letting us know about this one. We found a good example to show you, and keep it coming so we can create more videos like this. And if it was helpful for you, please let us know. Put some comments down below, and of course, subscribe and like this video. Thank you very much.